Life will always bring you on a roller coaster ride. I'm navigating through each and every day and loving what is and what the future may hold. My past has given me amazing memories and untold stories, and at times feeling of worry and hardship, which I now see as part of my life journey. Remember, show up, and if you fail, that's okay. Tomorrow will bring a new day and new ideas. I've had the privilege to spend time and interview some amazing leaders over the years. As they share their stories of life and business, I find out what makes them the people they are. I'm honoured to share their stories with you.
On this week's show, we have John Dawson. John is a coach and facilitator who's rolled his extensive experience as a comedian and a dramatist into effective creative thinking and team building training for international companies. These include Google, Airbnb, Dropbox and Twitter. As a performer, he studied improvisation at North America's favourite Second City Theatre, the forerunner and principal casting pool for long-running TV hit shows Saturday Night Live. John's a produced playwright and screenwriter with numerous featured films and TV projects currently in development. He assists fellow writers and production companies in developing their own IPs, with his work as a story consultant and script editor.
Over the years, I've had the pleasure to interview hundreds of people on my business shows, Breakthrough Brands and Business Eye. In doing so, I've put together my top 10 tips that I've picked up from my guests along the way. To discover what these are and how they may benefit you in your business, please click on the link below or go to joedalton.ie/discover. John Dawson, welcome to Breakthrough Brands.
Thanks, Joe. Nice to be here.
How did it all begin for you to realise that you had a sense of humour and you could bring that?
If I do.
If I do. Yeah, it's really bad.
That's not for me to say.
No, I didn't say a good sense of humour. I just said or a bad sense of humour.
True, yeah. It's very subjective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And where you then realised you had the passion to write screenwriter.
Well, it started, Joe, I'm Canadian. I'm also Irish now. I've been here 19 years. And I got my Irish passport just recently. I was born in the Niagara Falls area in Ontario, Canada, in a city called Hamilton. And I lived there in that area for years. And in my first life, I was a graphic artist. And I moved to the big city, which would be Toronto. And I didn't know anyone for the longest time because I was working freelance. So you see your clients on a very short sort of time frame. And there wasn't really a lot of opportunities for anything other than business interaction. And so I didn't really know anybody. I didn't have any social network in this big city. And a friend of mine called me up and said, "Do you want to go down to the Second City Fire Hall, or the old Fire Hall Theatre, the Second City Theatre, running out of the fire hall, and take a course in improvisation?" And I said, "Well, why? Why?" And he said, "Well, to meet people, to meet girls specifically." And I said, "Oh, wow, okay," because we didn't have any friends in Toronto, and he had moved there from the same area.
Yeah.
So we went, and everything opened up for me. Everything. My whole life changed. The Second City Theatre, the one in Toronto, was born out of the one in Chicago, and that's about 58 years old. And it's really rooted in improvisation, which is off the cuff.
Did you realise then this is what I want to do?
Not right away, but something grew in me from that point. There was a real moment of discovery, many moments of discovery. And part of discovery is failure. Yeah. Constantly failing. And improvisation, you have no script whatsoever. You're taking the information from the audience. You're working with your partner or partners. So you're constantly failing, and you're learning how to fail and have fun with that. But what I realize is that is actually learning. That's how we naturally learn.
But that's life.
It is life.
When you walk into being Irish, when you walk into a boozer, a pub, for those people who don't know what that is, we're great. We're all Shanakees here in Ireland. We tell stories. We improv. When you meet your friends, you tell them stories and they're laughing, and you pick it up along the way.
Absolutely. And what happened to me was something began to grow on the stage, the very stage that John Candy and Mike Myers came from. And Tina Fey and Bill Murray, they came from the Chicago company, and I was trained at that company, the Toronto company. And out of the Toronto company came Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really the training ground and the casting pool for SNL. So from that, I began to write sketches, comedy sketches, and I was in comedy troupes and what have you, and improv troupes and sketch comedy troupes, and that led to writing short films and plays, and that led to writing feature films, and that is what brought me to Ireland. I was hired to write a script for an animated feature film 19 years ago. I came over to do research, and I forgot to go back.
Yes, you got lost.
I got lost.
They cut the rope to the bridge.
That's right. Yeah, because this country is filled with storytellers.
It is. Yeah. It's a great country, and like yourself, I've travelled and I ended back here because there's something.
Yeah.
I hate the weather. Believe me.
Yeah.
I hate the weather.
Me too.
But I love the people.
Absolutely.
Everyone has a story, and the funny and the humour is great.
I love the crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for an American audience, that is fun, not a drug.
That's right. So when I go home and I tell them, I love the crack. The crack is mighty there. The crack is fierce.
The crack is great in Ireland.
Boy.
My God Almighty, you have all them coming over.
Yeah.
It's like the movie Purge. They're all heading over to the States to kill. No, that was a movie. That's not real. What? What was? That's not real. But I have my hammer. So, improv.
Yeah.
Is it improv, or are you trained to improv? And then is it improv?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's absolutely improv. And yes, you train for it. And and I teach it. I've been teaching it since I got here. And I probably started a year after I moved here. Because no one was doing it. There were some improv troupes, but no one was teaching it in a more formal way. Certainly not the way that I had been trained. And can it be learned through training? Absolutely. It's very physical. It's quite mechanical, and like anything done well, it just doesn't look it. It looks like it's completely natural. But in fact, we're improvising right now, aren't we?
Yeah, because I improvise all the time.
Sure.
Like, in every interview that I have with many guests, I pick up on what they're saying,
Sure.
and we drive it that way.
Sure.
But also, if I'm standing up on stage, I have 5 or 6 bullet points, and then I just off I go on a tangent.
Yeah, and
is
wing
is that what it is?
It is and it isn't. It's in a way, if we're on stage and we're not presenting ourselves and necessarily an argument or a discussion. If we're creating a story and a scene where we're playing characters other than ourselves on a journey, then we should learn, I believe, a sense of story structure to create an effective beginning, middle, and end, and a journey of change for those characters, because that's what a story is.
So give me 2-3 points of what you what improv teaching is, because I'm curious.
Listening, concentration, communicating. All of those three, actually, the three are connection. Right now, I'm connecting with you. You folks can't see, but we're looking where our eyes are locked. My focus is on Joe. His is on me. We're concentrating. All right, we're connecting. We're concentrating on each other, and
we're holding hands.
And you folks can't see that, but
we're hugging.
But it's lovely. And those are the 3 C's that create the 4th, collaboration, and it's all about collaborating.
It's amazing you say that, because have you ever tried this exercise? Look at someone in the eyes, say nothing for a period of time. It's very it's grand, and then it gets really uncomfortable.
Sure.
And then you really find your true self, because all barriers are down on it.
But we did that as children, and we were taught not to.
Yeah.
And the other thing we did as children, Joe, is we naturally played.
Yeah.
No one had to teach us. Oh, yes, there were set games and there were rules within games that we ultimately learned, but we had the ability to play instantly. Why? It's instinctive.
industrial age education has destroyed the playful child in us all.
It certainly has. And if it hasn't destroyed the child, I think it's made that child go dormant inside us. We've compartmentalized him or her. And what I do within my workshops for individuals as well as within the corporate world and for institutional clients is get them to realize that this is part of them. And that is one of the reasons why we live, is to be able to play, whether we admit it or not. We enjoy ourselves. We enjoy the company. We play with the people who we enjoy. We feel comfortable enough to play in front of them. And that means being vulnerable.
Vulnerable, yes. But it's also accepting who you are.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Warts and all.
Yeah.
And presenting that.
Yeah.
Right?
It's on one of the radio stations during the week, and they said the happiest we are, statistics are showing this, 16,
yeah,
and it gets better again when you're 52. So all that time, people are unhappy in adulthood.
Yes, I can imagine that's the case.
Yeah,
yes.
and that is something which I think that you, John, help people with as well, because you do storytelling. But you then say you spoke at like Twitter and you spoke with like Google and other venues.
Yeah, I've done courses and workshops.
Yeah. But that's what you're doing. You're showing people to be vulnerable in themselves so they can be better people.
Better people within themselves first and foremost. Know thyself, Socrates said, right? And that's know ourselves, warts and all right? Forgive ourselves. Understand our strengths and our weaknesses, celebrate our strengths, work on our weaknesses. Also, therefore, see others in the same light. Vulnerability, contrary to how it's been misinterpreted, is not weakness. No. It is emotionally active, interactive, and reactive.
Who wrote the book on vulnerability? Brené Brown. There was a book on it, and it's all about, she, as an analysis, everything had to be perfect. And we had to look at all these analytics.
Yes.
And as she went into this, she couldn't believe it, and she had to take time off because she realised there was more to life than being an analysis.
Well, absolutely.
That there was something bigger.
Absolutely. I mean, there's three states of mind, the fatalistic, the fixed, and the flexible. The fatalistic is Murphy's Law illustrates that perfectly. If something can go wrong, it will. You know, some of us think that way
constantly.
Yeah, constantly, predominantly. There's the fixed way of thinking, which is not dissimilar.
Logic?
Yes, it is by the book. It must be logical. We tend to be very cerebral. And it's very, very inflexible. And then there is the flexible. And the flexible way of thinking, we are open to stimuli. We are receivers.
Receptive to what's going on
exactly.
around us.
And therefore adaptable and changeable. And one of the only constants in life, whether we want it or not, is change.
Accepting contrast and living with it.
Yeah.
Which one are you?
Oh, I'm desperately trying to live with it. I'm always about trying to adapt. As I get older, I realize that, and I'm lucky to be getting older. I look at that every day as a gift.
Yeah.
That the older I get, the more flexible my brain becomes.
Yeah, I would be happy with everything as it is, waking up in the morning, enjoying that it's going to be a good day. If I have a negative thought, I go, okay, I've accepted that, but today's going to be a good day. And that's my journey every day, everyone I meet, and I live my life now to know that today's a good day.
Well, that is, then you found your bliss. I mean, that is ultimately what we're looking for within our personal lives, but that can also translate into our working lives, and it better because we spend a lot of our time at work, perhaps far too much. And I've found that so many people who attend my courses, the ones for individuals or the courses I do for corporate or institutional clients, they are there a lot, and they're not necessarily happy. And I work a lot with clients who have a fair bit of attrition. And there's a reason why. People will stay if they're happy.
No. People will stay because they perceive to be happy, because their mind is only leaving them in a place that it feels is comfortable, when in truth they shouldn't be there.
Well, that's very true. Then that depends upon their knowledge of what is happiness, and particularly their bliss. You sound like you have found your bliss, and that's a wonderful thing.
It's like success. People say, we all see signs. Success,
Yes.
and everything.
Yeah.
And you're kind of going, define success, because each individual will have a different perspective of success.
Absolutely. For me, is it the big house and the big car? Is it the yacht? Is it the things that, we can't, somebody told me there are no pockets in a shroud.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. But the more money you have, the more people you can help.
True. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with wealth.
But the success is what you perceive in your mind.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
What success is to me, that's a byproduct of success, the money. And the money provides us with flexibility. We are able to make more choices. My dad once said to me, son, he said, money's only a tool, but I would love a toolbox full of it.
Yes.
And I think that's a great quote.
It does grow on trees.
But for me is to be able to do exactly what I love, which is a process. And the success to me is to have the ability to do more of the process.
But John, we've met and we spoke and we've had coffee. There's been a connection.
Absolutely.
Right? And I know that you love what you do.
Yep.
I know there's, if I've never met anyone who is more passionate about what they do, it's you.
Wow. Thank you.
You
should meet more people then.
Yeah, I should. I have Danny in here tells me that I should get out of the studio more. But we try our best. So people were designing movies and writing movies.
Yeah.
They had the 3 or 4 archetypes, and then we relate them to our own life. So is there life lessons in movies, or is it all just fantasy?
Not at all. There are in a good story, which is always the basis of a movie, because you need story first. It absolutely reflects our lives. If it isn't going to be a great story. And regardless of whether it's in the form of a movie, a novel, a play, a graphic novel, it makes no difference. It's about story. When I began to write screenplays, I realized that I had achieved a level of ability, of acumen with writing screenplays, but it occurred to me that I didn't know enough about story. How can you do both? How can that be, what people might ask? Well, the screenplay is merely a blueprint for a movie or a TV show. But the story is its basis, is the foundation. And stories are, as you and I agree, all of us have stories. And our lives are in a way sort of ongoing episodics. But why we love story, the structure of story, is because it helps us order things. The cerebral part of our brains demand that we look for patterns, for structure, that we make sense out of nonsense, that we are able to navigate ourselves through this chaos that is living. And story puts events into a beginning, a middle, and an end, where we can, I suppose, as we, on a great story, go along the journey that the protagonist is going on, or protagonists, the hero, he, she, they are on a journey of change, and vicariously, so are we. That's why we watch great stories, and why we will rewatch them and still feel some joy, even though we know what's coming.
But it's even if you look at it, and they all seem to revolve around, I don't know which came first, Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey.
Absolutely.
And we can look at what he said, and that he looked at myth for each cultures and how they had the hero and how people changed. And he was bringing it from, as his great quote, follow your bliss.
Yes.
From a spiritual end.
Yes.
And then you look at movies, and movies have these stories. Like, look, when I first watched Star Wars at a very young age, I realized there was something in Star Wars that was more spiritual, the Force, the evil, with different characters in it. this is something that when people are watching and has a big following, and a lot of people don't get it.
They don't get it necessarily on a conscious level, because it's not necessarily meant to affect them on a blatantly conscious level. They're consciously watching and engaged in the characters' activities and interactivities, the conflicts that they have with each other, the external conflicts that they all have to deal with. But on another level, the audience is getting it. What Campbell talked about, which is what Jung talked about, which is what the story consultant, famous story consultant Christopher Vogler talks about, is that it's speaking to the collective unconscious, something that's deeply rooted in us on an instinctual level as human animals. We instinctively understand archetypes. We don't have to be taught them. We don't. James Cameron, whether you like his movies or not, is always using that hero's journey as the structure to his stories. Even Terminator, especially Terminator 2, particularly Aliens, he's always using that Campbell mythical monomyth story structure to his stories. Why? Because they speak to us on a level that we don't necessarily consciously know, but we will feel it, we will think about it, it will invade us and affect us.
Going to take a quick break, and I have a question for you after the break.
Okay.
Over the years, I've had the pleasure to interview hundreds of people on my business shows, Breakthrough Brands and Business Eye. In doing so, I've put together my top 10 tips that I've picked up from my guests along the way. To discover what these are and how they may benefit you in your business, please click on the link below or go to joedalton.ie/discover. We're talking about movies and we're talking about the archetypes and the people, the stories on them. But can you determine a person by what movies they like and what they fear in a movie?
How do you determine?
Okay, I don't like watching horror movies.
Okay.
Right? And if I'm watching a movie and the suspense is so great, sometimes I have to switch it off.
Well, that says something about the success of the movie, though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The suspense is so good. I go, Jesus, I can't watch this, and I have to knock it off. And I go, I'll watch that later, and I'll come back and watch it later.
Well, but you do come back and watch it later. But you just admitted that, didn't you? You do come back and watch it later, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I've absorbed the suspense and what do movies I like? I'm a man, so I like action movies.
Okay.
I like martial art. I like.
Women like them too. It depends on how well they're told.
I like good dramas. There's a lot of stuff out there that chick flicks and all that. I'd rather gouge my eyes out.
That is a horrible image that I have in my head now, and I'm probably going to take that to bed with me, I hope. Well, I'll tell you why you come back to that thriller, though.
Yeah.
Why? I'll tell you why. All right. Because you're engaged. Because it spoke to you, and it hooked you in, and you, if it's an effective story, you think about and care about, you have empathy for the protagonists. If you didn't feel something for them, even if that was in spite of yourself, you may be able to empathize with them, not necessarily sympathize, but you empathize with them, you find them engaging. If you come back to that because you must know what happens to them. And that means that that writer or writers, that filmmaker, have you. You have what I call an experience of being in the river. You're being taken along the flow of a story. And what is a great story? When you see a great movie, do you not lose all sense of time and space and place?
Yeah, but it just dawned on me. I know they're not going. It's always when they're going to die or something, right?
Right.
And I just realised, I know at that moment in time they're not, because there's another 10 episodes.
Exactly. You have to,
You have to watch another.
Unless
10.
it's Game of Thrones. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Where they've sort of subverted the expectation, right? Very, very cleverly.
Yeah, there's one thing about Game of Thrones which wrecked my head. You'd follow this character, and he was only really getting places, and then someone would kill him.
Yes.
And you go, why did you make me follow him?
Precisely what I'm
so
talking
long?
about. Yeah, I know. Some people love it. That's the subversion of expectation and the breaking up of the rules that we know them. But it doesn't quite work for me. But it certainly does for some. Well, I'm a complete geek when it comes to movies. A German producer once called me the IMDb walking database, and it's true. I'm a complete geek that way. So if you gave me the name of the actor, I could probably give you the movie.
Yeah. You know, you watch something and it's brilliant, and season 1 and 2 are amazing.
Yes.
And then season 3, it sucks.
Yeah.
Is that new directors, or is just the person just spawns it? Or is that the movie, the TV show, or the producers just trying to squeeze the living death?
Probably all of it, or
Like,
some of it depends upon the alchemy. I would imagine that if that occurs, and I certainly know of cases, shows where it has occurred.
We all know one about a plane. Do you remember that one? And they all landed on an island.
Oh yeah, we won't know. Yeah,
and it went on and on and on and on and on.
And I kept waiting for the end.
Yeah.
I think they have. They go too far with these things, and they've lived long after when they should have ended. And I suppose I'm quite old-fashioned and a formalist, is that I do need a beginning, a middle, and end. And not always necessarily, and definitely not in the way I expected. The trick of good storytelling is to create expectation and subvert it. And to go back to suspense, there's a Hitchcock was the master of suspense. He knew the difference between suspense and surprise. Surprise is when we're shocked. Something occurs to those characters and we don't see it coming. So we're as surprised as they are. And that creates a shock effect in us. Suspense is only created through what's called dramatic irony. And that's where you and I, the viewer, learn something that the characters don't. And so we are ahead of them. So we know the bomb is under the table, but they don't.
Yeah.
We know that the killer's upstairs in the bedroom, but they don't. And that's what creates suspense.
Yes. And that's why I hate horror movies.
That's why you hate horror movies.
Don't watch them.
You don't watch them.
No.
Clearly.
Yeah.
But you do go back sometimes because you have to.
Not horror movies. I won't even watch a horror movie. Yeah, no.
Well, people ask me why, as a screenwriter and story editor and script consultant, why is horror such a popular genre? Because so many people are so adverse to it, and yet it's enormously popular in the movies as in literature, is because whether we like it or not, it makes us feel alive.
No,
it touches right into the reptilian
it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, but it makes us feel something. Fear.
Fight or flight.
Right.
I don't like them. I think because I watched The Exorcist when I was under the age of 10.
Oh dear.
And I watched Friday the 13th.
Well, that explains everything.
You know.
Who let you do that?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, of course
walking
they would.
home from your friend's house because you
After
were
watching
The Exorcist November-y night or whatever, and sleeping with the lights on.
Well, no wonder you are the way you are, Joe.
Yeah. That
says it all. It's all been revealed.
It is, yeah. That's why I have these visions when I'm out walking at night in the dark with my dog that someone's going to, I swear to God, someone's going to run out of a bush with a hatchet.
Well, I hope it's a big dog. Clearly that imprinted upon you.
Yeah,
maybe you need a much bigger dog or a few of them, you know.
Yeah, or a hatchet.
There you go, yeah. Then you become the baddie. Yeah.
What was the two movies I asked you? Someone asked me to find out. One was what was in the box in Pulp Fiction. And what was the other movie that I asked you?
Well, you asked me to explain to you what was the meaning of the final episode of The Sopranos.
Yes, that's
remember?
it. Yes.
Yeah.
The end of it. What the hell was the end of it?
Well, I can only try to explain to you or paraphrase what David Chase said, who is the creator of the entire series. And I had the pleasure of seeing him speak here in Dublin about 5 years ago. I'm not defending him. I'm just paraphrasing him. I'm just the messenger. What he was striving to do was deliberately create an ambiguity and perhaps, in a way, subvert our expectations. We were all expecting something to happen to Tony. There had to be some retribution, some way he had to pay for the crimes that he had committed. And what Chase's argument is that, and is to this day, that he was presenting in that final episode, particularly in the restaurant scene, a sort of summary of Tony's life, even going right back to the music that's playing. And in the final and creating the sort of faux tension of his daughter trying to park the car, and we're always wondering who's going to get whacked, who's going to get hit, who's going to get hit, who's going to get hit, and then she comes through the door, and they're playing Journey's "Don't Stop Believing," and we hear that "Don't Stop Believing," and bam, it's over. Tony looks up, and it goes to black. And he wanted us to wonder forever whether that was the moment that Tony would die, or would it be some other time. That death is inevitable, but in this moment, what Tony had was his family back. It's a family meal in that restaurant. Let's hearken back to the very first episode. Tony's breakdown comes when he's sitting by the pool and watches a family of ducks leave the water on his swimming pool, and he has his first panic attack. And that was rooted in the fear of losing his family.
A new chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What Chase was saying was, he was trying to say to us, Tony isn't over in this moment. The Sopranos is, the TV show, but he's not over.
Yeah.
And he wanted us to go away thinking about it. Now, if his intention was, and it wasn't actually, but if his intention was to create all this dialogue and discourse forever about what was that last ending about, he certainly succeeded. Because he, by writing that, created this moment for us to discuss it.
I think I'll have to watch the whole lot again.
Watch it again.
Yeah, I'll watch it again.
Chase was once questioned about that, and why didn't Tony die? And he said, "You've been following this guy for how many seasons? Are you telling me you want him to? Ask yourself why you would want that."
So, tell me where all this fits in for your new chapter in your life. Because you're evolving into corporate world. Mm-hmm. Now I have something to offer because I have the confidence to offer instead of teaching people how to write.
Right. Which I do as well.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Well,
another string to the bow.
Another string to the bow. Well, what I learned at the theater and what I've been teaching for years, and which has affected my entire way of living, is I realized that it's not just a skill to have in one's personal life. It is a life skill that you need in your professional life as well, and therefore should be part of the professional environment. And that we're going to be far more successful, depending on how you define success, if we are able to truly collaborate with people, which means that we have to develop a skill set to be able to do that, because sometimes our formal and informal educations have created in us that fixed way of thinking or that fatalistic way of thinking, and we are disabled in our flexible way of thinking, and we need to find in us our bliss through collaboration, because we're social creatures, and in some cases that requires a formal kind of instruction to something that we did as children very naturally. Okay, you think, how does that work in the world of business? Well, in business, we're people working with people. We're creating together. We're creating services and products that we wish to sell that fill needs. But we can't effectively do that unless we're truly communicating with each other. So the rules the mechanics that I learned, and the tool set that I developed in the theater, I bring into the professional world. They're exactly the same. It doesn't make any difference whether it's the stage or the boardroom. Collaborating is collaborating. Problem solving is problem solving.
It's human connection, I think.
Absolutely.
Because I think we get involved and everything is caught up in technology, especially AI. I realized that everything we do, see, watch, drive is all being, we used to call them all these things algorithms, but now it's AI is doing them. And there is a clone of each one of us somewhere with all the data that we're doing on a daily basis. Like
That's a great idea. We should write a story.
Do you know,
Yeah,
there
I like
is,
that.
there's a clone of all the data, the movies we watch, the stuff on our phone, the Google Maps.
Absolutely.
On it.
Yeah. That is most likely the case.
It is, yeah. And is you're teaching two things that I feel that you're bringing into companies: humor,
Yes. Very important.
and human connection.
The two of the reasons why we live was certainly the two major reasons for me to be alive. And that when I say humor, that doesn't mean that we should take our work lightly. But I do believe that we can be amused as we work, because if we are, then we want to be there. And if we want to be there, and that means wanting to connect with the people we're working with, then we will not be leaving, and we will be incredibly creative and therefore incredibly productive and therefore incredibly successful.
Yeah, and that's it.
In every level, personally, and commercially. And we must accept that change is a constant in life. And the only way to do that is to develop a changeable, flexible way of thinking.
That's the way it rolls.
There you go.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Oh, if a client is sitting in front of you and they've said no, you haven't given them enough reasons or the reason to say yes, which bespeaks of something missing in your pitch.
Trust.
That exactly. You haven't created what we have right between us right now, the creative space where something magical can happen collaboratively, because we trust and respect each other. And you have to gain their trust and respect, and vice versa. And you must listen to them and understand fully what their needs are. That said, conversely, something I heard we can't, and I think is a part of that, the yin to the yang of that, is that we can't throw our net too wide. We can't please everybody all the time.
Yeah, and it's also usually, I always say in sales, you can't sell to everyone.
No.
Because maybe your product isn't the right fit for them, or they can't afford it.
Well, there you go. And it's not going to work. You're knocking on a closed door. David Ogilvy, the famous ad man, wrote in his book Confessions of an Ad Man that it was more important he discovered what clients not to take than the ones to take, because you're going to be knocking your brains out trying to make them happy, and it's a bad fit. It's just not going to work for them or for you.
A slave.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah. It's not going to work.
I have values, and if I feel that someone lines up to the values, I'll work with them. If they don't line up to my values,
then don't.
I don't. As I have that gut connection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Best book you would recommend for someone to read?
I think it's the best business book I've read is Yes and Lessons from Second City, which is basically the wonderful, entertaining, highly educating, edifying manual of the methodology that they use in the theater and how they've translated that into the business world.
Okay.
I think it's magnificent. Just this, and it's to me, it shows how art reflects life and life reflects art. They're not separate things.
No, that's straight away.
Not at all.
And where can people find you?
Well, I have a site that's actually being reconstructed right now, and I'm actually going through a rebranding process as well. But the easiest thing to do is to get me on, email me at johndawsonwrites@gmail.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
To wrap it up, have I left anything out, or do you want to?
No, anything else you want to talk about?
No,
want to talk to me more about The Exorcist? Yeah?
Just no. I've got over it.
Yeah. I hope get a bigger dog, okay?
Get a bigger dog, yes. Don't go out at night.
Don't go out at night, yeah. He's behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain.
Yeah.
John, thanks for coming on to Break Two Brands.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Delighted.
All right.
Bye. Last, before we wrap it up.
Okay.
What song would you like us to play out with?
Oh, it's my favorite song right now. When I hear it in the gym, I stop working out and I start dancing to everyone's dismay. Human by Rag and Bone Man.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
John.
All right, Joe.
Thanks for coming on to Breakthrough Brands.
Thanks for having me.